Okay. Okay, our meeting is being live streamed. So good evening. We will be conducting tonight's meeting in person in City Council chambers, as well as virtually using Zoom to allow staff and public to social distance. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting tonight on Wave Channel 18 and online through the city's YouTube channel. If you would like to participate in live public comment via the Zoom platform, please refer to the agenda for instructions. Scott Stewart from the LDS Church will be giving the invocation this evening, and the mayor will begin the meeting immediately after. So Scott, if you'd like to come to the podium.
Good evening. Our Father in heaven, at the beginning of this city council meeting, we come together with an expression of gratitude for the community that we live in. We recognize the goodness of the many people that live in this community, for the members of the city council and the city staff for all that they do to serve and assist all the other agencies in this community and working together to build strong, faithful communities and businesses that are here to make a difference. We express our gratitude for the many wonderful things that we enjoy living in this community and in this state of California and the United States of America. We recognize the fortunate blessings that come from thee for this land, for the way in which our Constitution was formed, and we're grateful to be a part of it. Father, we recognize that there are many difficult matters facing not just this community, the state, our nation, and the world at this time. And our hearts and minds are turned to thee to petition blessings that will come to strengthen those in civic and other community organizations, work together in a spirit of unity to bring relief and peace to those that struggle. We ask for a special blessing to be upon those that are affected by the events in the Ukraine and for all those families and people that have been relocated from their homes. We pray for thy blessings to be upon them and that we can all work together throughout the world to make a difference to help them. So Father, this time as we begin this meeting, we petition thy blessings to be upon each member who will participate here. We're grateful to be, again, part of this community, and we express our gratitude unto thee, and do so in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I really appreciate you being here.
Sure. Thank you.
Your concentration is remarkable.
Yes. All right, it is 6:01. Welcome to the March 8th, 2022 regular meeting, City of Lincoln, City Council, Redevelopment Successor Agency, Public Financing Authority. And so item number 1, call the meeting to order. Ms. Scanlon, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Joyner,
Here.
Councilmember Carlskint,
Here.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Here.
Councilmember Silhai,
Here.
and Mayor Andriotta.
I'm here. Thank you. Item number 3, report from closed session. Ms. Mollenkoff, do we have any report from closed session?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, staff received direction, but there is no reportable action this evening.
Okay, thank you. Item number 4, Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked our new city manager, Sean Scully, to lead us in the pledge tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Great, thank you so much. Item number 5, agenda modifications. Do we have any agenda modifications this evening from the council or?
I do not.
Okay. All right, item number 6, presentations. We do not have any presentations tonight. And so we did have public hearing items, but they were continued to date certain to the March 22nd, 2022 City Council meeting. And so if there's anyone here that would like to comment on the food waste or redistricting ordinance tonight, please do so under public comment on non-agenda items. Okay, which leads us to item number 7, public comment on non-agenda items. So City Clerk, do we have any public comments?
I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and I don't see any in chambers, Mayor.
Okay. Then we will move on to item number 8, the consent agenda. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine business and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the City Council or resident requests a specific item be removed from the consent agenda for separate action. Any items removed will be considered after the remainder of the consent agenda. Do any of my colleagues wish to remove an item from the consent agenda tonight? Okay. Anybody from the public wishing to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Mayor, I don't have any hands raised on Zoom, and I don't see any in chambers.
Okay, great. Having no requests, then I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Member Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriata.
Yes. All right, so we move on to number 9, public hearings. We do not have any. Those were moved to the next meeting. Item number 10, general business. So 10A, adopt resolution 2022-50, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute a public art donation agreement and proceed with the proposed Stacks art installation. So our library manager, Catherine Hunt, will give a staff report. Wow, we get to see you so soon after the last time. That's amazing.
I know, twice in as many council meetings.
That's right. Thank you.
All right, so I just have a brief staff report because we do have the artist with us this evening to walk us through a brief presentation. But I'm excited to bring forward to the council this proposal for an art installation for the Lincoln Public Library at 12 Bridges. In mid-2021, the artist, Mr. Jim Phillips, contacted library staff. And at that point, we reviewed it. We did feel that the art installation was in line with the mission of the library. Public art has been a part of the Lincoln Public Library at 12 Bridges since its opening in 2007. We also took it before the Library Advisory Board and Library Advisory Committee. Both of those entities gave unanimously positive approvals for it. And it was also reviewed by our facilities and building staff for the installation and the location and found acceptable. And now it is coming forward to you all. And so with that, I would like to introduce our artist, Mr. Jim Phillips.
Come up to this microphone right here. Yeah.
Oh, I'm up too. Forward and back. Got it. Hi, my name is Jim Phillips. I'm a Northern California artist, relatively new to the community. I came from Shasta County, Redding area. One of my first stops was at the library. My wife refers to me as a philanthropic artist. I don't charge for the things I do, at least for these large public installations. Let's see if I can get something. It's supposed to be. Okay. I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah.
We'll speed
they'll
things
catch
along
up.
here. Part of what I have done in the past in the Redding area, actually in Shasta County, Tehama County, Trinity County, I have installations. And
There it is. This one we have it on.
there you see your Lincoln Public Library. This is a place I found fairly early on when I moved here. I spent some time there doing some drawings, taking a lot of photographs. An associate of mine, a neighbor of mine, Richard Pearl, who is, I think, the city treasurer or something like that.
Correct.
He suggested, he knew a little bit about what I do, and he suggested that I talk to Catherine, which I did. And we prepared this proposal, actually. It's changed just a little bit, but it's more or less the proposal that was given to the advisory committee. And
There you go.
This is what I am proposing. It's a 8-foot tall glass and steel column. It's called the stacks. The glass portion is represented by the light blue segment of it. That's a side view and an in view, if you can picture that. On the in view to the right, the blue line that runs down the middle of that is the glass. It's the steel is a wide flange beam. It's been turned, cut down the middle through the web, and then turned back to back. So the flanges are back to back and they hold the glass in place. That wide flange beam is welded to a 1/2-inch steel plate on the bottom. And that's the structure of it. Steel plate gets anchored down to a concrete base. The glass is 1/2-inch tempered plate glass. It's the kind of glass that you would see in a mall or a multi-story building that they use for the safety railing. It's very, very strong glass. The colored portions of it are traditional stained glass, and they are attached to the colored glass or the glass panel with a glass adhesive, and that and then they're caulked with a silicone. It's a very traditional industrial process for attaching glass. It will kind of emulate the even older tradition of leaded glass, but it won't actually be leaded glass. It'll be much stronger and much more durable than leaded glass. The location, now, that's a little bit of my background. I went to Humboldt State. I was an art major there. I taught school for 5 years after graduation. And then I migrated into the construction business. And I've spent most of my working life in the construction and engineering business. My minor in college was industrial technology. That's one of the ways I ended up in the construction business. And what I do now with these large public installations is mostly construction based. It's industrial based. That's a larger picture. It's basically the same thing. Well, I might comment the piece on the right that's the edge view. You can see that when I cut the web of the beam, it's cut in notches, and those are sort of to emulate the profile of a stack of books. If you're having a hard time picturing, this might help a little bit. This is a perspective view of the same thing. When I started spending some time at the library, I made kind of a record of what kind of art is at the library now, and these are some pictures of the art that's installed at the library at this time. And this is the location. It says preferred location. Since this is a relatively old proposal, this is the location we have finally fixed on. This is on the northeast corner of the library. It's in a partially enclosed garden area. It's visible from a couple of different angles inside and also visible from the outside as you approach the library from the traffic circle out in front of the library, either going to the school or going to the library's parking lot. These were some of the other locations we looked at. These have since been discarded. Everybody agrees that the one we picked is the most appropriate. These are some of the earlier pieces that I've done in Shasta, Trinity County, Tama County. The one on the left is a 3-column installation at the Reading Library. It's called Points of Departure, and that refers to one of the purposes of a library, to provide points of departure for the people that are using it. They go there to start things. Siblings is at the Highland Arts Center in Weaverville in Trinity County. And its primary name is Siblings. It's made up of 2 individual pieces. One is control and one is spontaneity. And it's kind of the balance point that all artists have to deal with when they start to create a piece of work. The other one, the one on the right, is probably the largest thing I've done. It's 14 feet tall, 2 feet square, and goes down in the ground 10 feet. When I build these, it's not just me. There's a large group of collaborators, mostly people that I knew when I was in the construction business. They have, for many years, chipped in, provided all the concrete pumping, all the rebar and the steel. Home Depot even contributes all my form lumber and 2x4s and plywood. It's a very, I think it's a very unique situation. I'm very gratified every time these people jump in and help out. These are three others. The one on the left is also at a library, the library annex at Shasta College. I was involved in the construction of that annex, and I like the grove of oaks right behind the building. So afterwards, I asked the president if I could put a sculpture there, and he said that would be great, although we had a similar kind of process to approve that. And it's called Points of Perspective. And for an educational library, a library and educational institution, that's what they're doing. Those students are there to gain a point of perspective, to have a way of looking at the world. And that's the tie-in to the name of that and the perspective drawing that's actually a double panel. There's one panel behind that one that you can't see. They both have designs on them. The meander is a piece, a 5-column piece that's down at the Turtle Bay Exploration Park. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Exploration Park in Reading. It's right across the park area from the Civic Center, which is the building in the background. The last one, seeking order, is at Shasta College's Tehama campus in Red Bluff. And that is a comment on the 3 ordering systems for higher education, the arts, the humanities, and the sciences. And those 3 columns represent those 3 major ordering systems and then all their subcategories. So I told you a little bit about my background. I'll just leave this up for a second while I tell you a little bit more. When I came down, I was not sure that I was going to continue to do this because I don't have this large group of supporting people like concrete batch plants. And although Girlinger Steel has an outlet in Woodland, their home base is in Reading, and they were always there with any steel requirements that I had. So I wasn't sure that I was going to do this, but in the time that I spent at the library and the time we spent, Catherine and I spent talking, I decided this was an appropriate thing that I wanted to do. I do it because I like doing it. So we're moving forward in that way, and I hope that it meets with all of your satisfaction and we get to move forward on the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Really appreciate that. And your work is beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Yes. And the fact that you just do this because you like it,
Because I liked it.
yeah, is amazing. Thank you. All right. So we'll see if the council has any questions or comments. Yeah, just
No questions. It's a wonderful project and a wonderful gift to the city that we very much appreciate. An observation, it may become the most popular among our law enforcement community with the thin blue line exposed on the edges. So thank you. It looks like it's going to be gorgeous. Is it on the north side of the building?
It'll be in the approach area. It's on the northeast corner of the building.
So you'll get light most of the day playing through the glass.
Yeah, it'll be with the light behind it, just daylight behind it. It'll be pretty dramatic.
Yeah, it should be. Great.
Catherine,
Right.
I have one question about that location. Is that an old picture or is that the way, is it landscape like that normally, or is that,
So there is some landscaping there, yes.
okay,
And that was one of the things when we talked to facilities about being able to locate that in there and what that would do with the landscaping.
okay. I'm only asking because I think that's the style of it, but it looks kind of sparse. And I was wondering, is that the way it's supposed to look on that side of the landscaping there? Is that the
Could I address that?
style?
I've spent
Yes,
some
go right
time
ahead.
looking at that. Actually, that is kind of an old picture. It's almost a year and a half old. It actually got almost overgrown
Oh, okay.
until the parks or whoever takes care of your landscaping went in just recently and has kind of trimmed it back.
Okay.
It's not sparse. It'll be
Nice.
just fine. In fact, we may have to take a little bit of stuff out. We've already done kind of an underground survey. There's a storm drain in there we have to pay attention to. The rest of the stuff is pretty minor irrigation, drip irrigation stuff. Yeah, I think the landscaping will be fine just the way it is.
Right. I just want the landscaping to match the beauty of your sculpture. so, yeah.
Yeah, one of the reasons we picked it, it's kind of this little alcove
Yeah.
of, I guess you'd call it the water critical landscaping. It doesn't use a lot of water, but it looks really good. It will look really good.
Good. Awesome. Thank you.
I've been waiting for this to come forward. I had the privilege of being able to be at that lab black committee when you presented. And so I'm very pleased to see that it's finally coming to fruition. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Councilmember Carlskin, questions, comments?
Comments. Welcome to the community.
Well, thank you.
And there's a lot of other places that could use your art.
Don't tempt us. We'll take you up on
Anyway,
it.
really appreciate your
Yeah, when I
donation.
was college, I was primarily a ceramicist. And you guys have a long culture with ceramics
Yeah.
here. So my mind's kind of churning on that whole process.
Have you joined the Art League yet?
I haven't, but I have been to the building and I am probably going to stop by there on my way out of the building, this part.
Our city attorney is the president of the Art League currently, so you might want to chat with her.
Yes, we will.
Awesome. Councilmember Lortson.
Yeah, I want to thank you for your presentation and being a great addition to our library. We do need things like that, pieces of art, and it'd be great to even look at other places, maybe in front of our, city hall or whatever.
Now, my wife is actually a volunteer at the Historical Museum.
Mhm.
And I spent a little time roaming around there. I was thinking about what, you already have some pretty interesting ceramic
Yeah.
things over in that quad area outside the old city hall. That was the old city hall.
Yes.
Yep.
So I kind of looked around that area.
Want to say anything else or? Well, thank you so much. And yes, what Councilmember Carlson said, welcome to the community. We're very happy to have you. And we're very thrilled about this project. So let's see if if there's any public comment on this.
Mayor, no hands are raised on Zoom.
Mr. Chapman? Mr. Phillips, you can go ahead and have a seat. And if there's other questions, we'll call you back up and you can answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mayor, council members, city staff, Byron Chapman. Yeah, when I looked at the documents and the pictures and everything at home, boy, it was just, I think I'm pretty much like everybody else. I looked at that and I go, once I looked at it in the proposed area in which it's going to, I thought, I couldn't imagine it being anywhere else. It's a terrific spot. And again, appreciate that very, very much. It's very nice of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. All right, anybody else in the council chambers who wishes to make a comment?
Another comment.
Yeah.
I was just sitting here thinking, after welcoming you to the community, we're a very fortunate community in that we get a lot of people with all kinds of talent that end up supporting the community through donations of time, effort, and whatever, putting their talents to work. So this is a thing that maybe pushing people to understand that there are a lot of benefits to growing a community. So I just want to make that point.
All right, if there's no other comments or questions, then I will accept a motion to adopt resolution 2022-15.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
absolutely.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriata.
Yes, thank you so much. We are very excited. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Appreciate it.
Thank you again.
All right, item 10B, adopt resolution 2022-51, authorizing the city manager to execute the property tax increment agreement between the county of Placer and the city of Lincoln as to tax rates area 076-055, said B NEQ, and our city manager, Sean Scully, is going to give a staff report. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Mayor. I'm going to actually go to the podium for this one.
Go right
That's
ahead.
Okay, good evening, council, and thank you so much. So I have before you this evening a tax sharing agreement that we're very excited about. Primarily, it relates to the importance of the project, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. So Sub B, otherwise known as the Northeast Quadrant Specific Plan. In March of 19, the Lincoln City Council approved this specific plan and associated documents. So the CEQA review, as well as infrastructure financing plan, development agreements, et cetera. The project includes 198 acres, 430 units of low density single family housing, 4.5 acres of parks, 22.8 acres of open space, and perhaps most importantly, almost 70 acres of commercial property for retail and other commercial purposes, with a possibility within the specific plan for a 5-acre conversion of that land to multifamily. Here's a map of the property. In case you'd forgotten, thanks to Tony, who was around here somewhere, because he designed that. So appreciate that. Here's the terms. I'm going to keep this very simple because, frankly, it's simple agreement. It's an open-ended term, takes effect on the last date of execution or when the property annexes. The initial property tax split post-annexation, we're going to call that Tier 1. The county retains 61.6% of the property and supplemental tax revenue, and the city will receive the remainder. The interesting thing about this agreement and the tiers is that it really shifts, as you'll see, depending on how much commercial property is developed. And there's a very specific reason for that I'll share in a moment. Anyway, after 450,000 square feet of developed commercial, and the way that's defined in the agreement is essentially once that building permit has been issued. So it doesn't necessarily need to be stick built at that point. The shift splits to 54% to the county and 45.6% to the city. And then after 900,000 square feet of commercial is developed, it actually flips the lion's share to the city at 47.3 to the county and 52.7 to the city. So the question, there's two thoughts here. First off, I think that it's important that as we start to see more of these come forward to the council, as new projects come along, to remember that as the council evaluates tax sharing proposals, it's a misnomer or a mistake to try to compare those to previous agreements, because the way that it should be evaluated is really project by project. Every project has different characteristics and different impacts, different zonings, and therefore there's a different impact to the county and city depending on what you're annexing. In this particular instance, the reason why you see these tiered rates essentially is that, to be blunt, the county wants to incentivize commercial development over residential development because their model, whether or not you agree with it, indicates that a single family residential home or a multifamily unit has a much greater impact versus nearly no impact to commercial. And so they recognize that in this negotiation, that it was important to not just paint with a very broad brush and understand that there's some nuance to every project here. So, and in case you're wondering, it's in the staff report, the total square footage that could be built within the commercial area is roughly 971,000 square feet. So whether the gross floor area ends up actually getting over 900,000 square feet depends on a variety of different circumstances. It depends on tenancy. Some tenants need and require much more parking, which reduces your floor area. It depends on how the developers determine that they want to split up the commercial properties. So there's a variety of components to it. We feel very comfortable that 450,000 square feet minimally is essentially a given on this in this area. To get to 900, maybe slightly more challenging, but I think it's very doable just given the kind of strategic location of the project. It's really Lincoln's best chance at a significant commercial development that has regional implications. A lot of our commercial that we have currently, while it serves Lincoln really well, and actually some of the outlying areas, it isn't as adjacent to Highway 65 in many cases as this project will be. And we can talk about Village 5 separately, but it plays in here in that the other three corners of this intersection are basically all colored commercial as well. So only additional terms that are worth mentioning is that there's some language added in here that allows for essentially a reopener. And that's super unusual in California. Usually you sort of get married and you can never get divorced. And in this case, basically the language seems to indicate that if there's some sort of adverse event or significant change, either party can say, hey, time out, let's sit back down at the table. And there's provisions essentially, it's like an informal mediation process where you hire a professional expert that's expert in finance. They will run numbers and the county and city can, at mutual agreement, come to some sort of other arrangement, which is similar to something you've done fairly recently on other tax sharing agreements. So it's good to have it in there, probably something we will fight to have in every agreement moving forward. Finally, and most importantly, the city to receive 100% of city sales tax from commercial businesses within the annexation. When most folks probably read this, they say, well, yeah, duh. But I can tell you that that's not the case in many places. In many places, they do property tax in lieu, where the county might increase our share by 10% in property, but they also want 5% in sales. The city of Lincoln will not achieve financial stability through property tax. It's not going to happen. It won't happen for a variety of reasons. And if the council wants, during your questions, for me to go through the painful explanation of ERAF and how much that takes off of the top, I can do that. But just suffice to say that when cities and counties are negotiating tax sharing agreements, they're really fighting over who the biggest loser is, because the vast majority of that is augmented to the school system and a couple of special districts. So sales tax component to this project is significant. You know, folks could ask, hey, what do you think that this might generate on a yearly basis? It's possible to tell just given who the tenants are. It may end up being some commercial business, meaning actual office space. So it doesn't really generate sales tax in the same way. But I can tell you that 950,000 square feet is a lot of floor area. I'd have to do some math, but I would hazard to guess that if you took the entire Lowe's commercial area, and the entire Safeway commercial area, and the entire to be built area across kind of over by the rodeo grounds, that's in the neighborhood of what you're talking about in terms of scale. Next is required action. So if council chooses to approve this agreement, it will proceed through the LAFCO process for annexation. It's a pretty important component under the Revenue and Taxation Code, and also under Knox, which is a LAFCO law. It has to be in place prior to annexation. The project is literally sitting at LAFCO currently. So this is one of the last pieces for them to sort of start their process. And one other little component, just because I think it's important that the project, residential components of the project will have to fold into CFDs, which will offset any other general fund impacts. And I've already talked with the county CEO's office, and I believe they're approved. Assuming this is approved tonight, this will go to their second meeting in March for approval. Obviously, always alternatives. You could not approve it, and then it will sit in stasis at LAFCO. Or you could provide us alternate direction on how you'd like us to renegotiate some component of the deal. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, and also, I have met with both property owners on this, majority landholders on this project. And from a planning perspective and from a finance perspective, to me, of all of the things that are working in and around Lincoln, this is perhaps the most important financial move that the city could make for long-term stability that you have on the books. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Scully. Really appreciate that. Very informative presentation. And I mean, I'm not projecting what our vote will be, but I think if we chose not to, Tony might shoot us. Have you heard the term
In the fetal position
going
somewhere.
postal? Yeah. All right, so let's see if the council has questions or comments. Right? Okay.
Just comments, really, I guess. This is long past due. Very grateful that we're finally getting this done. Appreciate Sean walking us each through each tier, if you will, and how that will affect the overall deal. I think it's one of the better agreements that's ever been negotiated. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate, separate and aside from this, you getting up and doing these presentations and sharing with us your insights and your experience. It's great to hand things off to staff and let them present them, but I love seeing the city manager jump in when it's important and do a presentation. So thank you for that.
Councilmember Carlson.
Ditto. It's a very good agreement. In fact, it's a very good agreement. But it's just the start of good agreements. They're all going to get better, right?
That's the idea. Yeah.
Councilmember Lordson.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. I mean, that was a great presentation, and it looks like a very good agreement. Just wish all our agreements were like this.
Councilmember Sohai.
Yeah, I think you guys are going to hear a lot of dittos tonight, but for the public who might be watching now or later, that's because this is long overdue, like Councilmember Joyner said, and a long time coming and has been spoken of ad nauseum and one-on-ones and other meetings. And I am just thrilled at the result. And thank you for your presentation. And I'm thrilled to be able to support it.
So to give the public a sense of this has been stalled at LAFCO for at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years, Tony. I know the whole process of 10 years.
All
Yeah.
right now.
So, no, that's fair though.
No, I'm just-
So
I'm
for the
just
public
teasing
to
you.
understand, these projects take a really long time and cost a lot of money to bring forward. And the risk that's being undertaken by the people proposing these projects is extraordinary. So apologize for the delays. We're going to get it done.
Thrilled it's finally here though.
No, I was just teasing, and I wanted to say, Alyssa's right. We've had lots of conversations. And so on behalf of the city and the council, we just want to say thanks for hanging in there, for your patience, for your long suffering, for dealing with our staffing shortages and all of the bumps along the way. But I'm really, really excited that we're in a good place. We're in a better place. There's only can go up from here. And with Sean's leadership with our staff, I'm excited about not only this project, but future projects. And so thank you very much, Tony, and all of you that are part of this deal. So let's go out to the public and see if there's any comments.
Mayor, I have no hands raised on Zoom. I
Go
don't
ahead,
see
Mr.
any.
Chapman. Nope. Wow. All right, Tony, would you like to say a word? Go ahead.
And I promise I don't have any weapons.
No.
Been checked downstairs. Now I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you all and congratulate you for your being mayor
Thank you.
this year. This is the first time we speak. I appreciate staff, especially Sean and his presence, and staff been working hard. I know it's been a few weeks, and I think we accomplished in a few weeks as much as a couple of years. I think this is really good agreement. Also, sometimes we don't have the opportunity to debate about the agreement that's between the county and the city. But compared to others, I see there's a positive to the city, especially about the commercial. And also, we do have residential, and a lot of people don't realize that you need residential for commercial. I remember when we had to fly and go meet with Home Depot people, I had to count how many homes are there and how many are going to be there by the opening day. So all of it rooftop brings commercial, and I'm glad to see Lincoln have enough commercial that we actually draw in some people from Roseville. I was dining here and brought my family on the weekend, and I met, next to me, a gentleman from Roseville coming to Lincoln to dine. So we're able to chat, and his family comes here to dine. So there's activities coming your way, and this is going to draw more and more. Hopefully we didn't lose big commercial activities. Hopefully we'll work hard to get them. But I think this is the best site to be in. And, we already planned the site to work with the future interchange as well. So, there's a lot of things went into this preparation to the specific plan. But again, seeing us close, hopefully next couple of months will be annexed and it'll be through celebration to the next level. So I appreciate everybody's effort and staff and looking forward to the new Lincoln.
Tony, dinner's on me when we get annexed. All right. Any other
Mayor,
questions or comments or
yeah,
public comments?
We did have a hand
Okay.
raised on Zoom. Josh, please go ahead.
Thank you, Tony, for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. All right, any others? All right, we'll bring it back to the council. And if you have another comment or question, go right ahead. If not, I will entertain a motion to adopt resolution 2022-51.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Carlskin,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai.
Yes.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriotta.
Yes. All right, thank you, everybody, for that. Very exciting. All right, we move on to item 10C, another long-awaited discussion, and hopefully we'll be able to get this settled tonight. Discuss priorities, strategies, and desired outcomes for the use of the American Rescue Plan Act, nicknamed ARPA, revenue received by the city of Lincoln, and if so desired, adopt resolution 2022-52, authorizing the Lincoln Business Grant Assistance Program and direct the city manager to execute necessary agreement for the administration of the program with the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. So Sean, are you going to do this one as well? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, council. ARPA, here we go. Yet another ARPA discussion, and I'm here to tell you it's here to stay for a few years. So one of the things that was very frustrating for me in writing this report, as you saw with the last item, is I like to try to bring you clean, concise, simple things. And ARPA is neither clean nor concise nor simple. And so I'm gonna attempt to guide you through something that's a little bit more messy than I'm used to presenting to city councils, but I think we're gonna get there. So let's start with the discussion you had on February 14th. We discussed this $10 million standard allowance. There was some discussion, I think, from Councilmember Silhai about needing to really be clear about the reporting requirements and deadlines to spend that money. So we've done quite a bit of additional work on that. I've talked to a few experts, to the extent there are experts yet, in ARPA. And then in addition to that, the council really kind of focused on 4 key areas to start. And I think that the way it would be great in a perfect world where all things were equal for us to have a funding strategy that took us from $1 to the 11.5 million we have. Unfortunately, we live in a time where needs exist today. And so what I've tried to do with this report is step you through the work we've done on the majority of these concepts and then build in a few action items that I think you could take action on this evening. So let's start up with an update on the final rule. There was a misconception that I had, and I think that a lot of cities had, that if you take this $10 million standard allowance, that it sort of just becomes totally unprotected funds that you can use in any way you want, just like you could with most of your general fund dollars. And that is not accurate. It doesn't change, I think, the variety of neat things that the city could do with the funding, but I just want to be really clear. This is a chart that I actually pulled out of the final rule. And if you see, for any projects or programs that are less than $1 million, that top line says no written justification required. And you do not have to also report that to the federal government. So that's anything below that. It should be within the spirit of ARPA, but it's not required that you document. Greater than $1 million, but less than 10, a written justification is required, but we do not have to submit that to the Treasury for review or anything. We keep that on file. And if someday down the road in a few years we're audited, we have to be able to provide them reasonable justification for why we allocated the funds in that manner. So, for example, if the council chose to fund some type of mental health assistance program at $2 million, it would be a fairly simple justification. Literally, we're talking a few sentences. That, you know, obviously it's well documented that COVID-19 has wreaked havoc on us physically, but also maybe even more so mentally. And this is our attempt to try to right that wrong in our community, period. And you keep it on file. Someday down the road, a federal auditor shows up, you provide them the justification, and provided that it's not ridiculous, the idea is that it's accepted. And 10 million or more, which really is not our situation, you have to report that to the treasurer. So, and then if you take a look at the second column, that's if you choose to get way outside of their list of authorized expenditures. And I don't actually have a problem to, I haven't discussed this with the city attorney, but I think that as long as the justification is sound, I think it's more than appropriate to issue that report to the treasury. We're going to have to do reporting, I think, April 1st already, and we will just be reporting that we've done nothing so far. But I don't know that just because you have to report, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't, move forward with something really interesting you wanted to do. Here's the expenditure timelines. We have to obligate them sometime between now and December, end of 2024, and we have to expend them by 2026. So that the end of 2026 is sort of our deadline that all $11.5 million in change should be allocated to something. Okay, funding concept number one, business grant program. Obviously, Tom at the chamber explained that we have an imminent need for the program. I think everybody recognizes that. My concern was that we were going to continue to have this discussion more globally, and we're 4 months down the road and we haven't got a business grant program out. And people and businesses need the assistance now, as I'm going to show you in a moment. There was a desire for a needs survey, which Tom was nice enough to do more than once. And we'll get back to this, but the recommendation that I think is the most prudent at this point is to authorize $1 million in initial funding for the program and contract with the chamber to administer it. We have a variety of either past Lincoln programs and Elk Grove, Rancho Cordova, previous places that I've employed where these types of funds have been given out under a program, and it's set up to be fair. It's set up to make sure that you're prioritizing to the extent you can brick and mortar. It eliminates the potential for businesses that really wouldn't be qualified for this kind or shouldn't be qualified for this kind. So, for example, sorry to Target, but Target's probably is not going to qualify for this kind of assistance. It's really designed to assist with our smaller businesses, and you'll see that here in a second in the survey. Here's a little component of the survey, kind of just asking the businesses what kind of hardship that they have gone through during this time. And you see some interesting things that weren't the case if you would have gone back about a year and a half. Employee retention, difficulty to get infrastructure upgrades funded or done. Obviously, everybody's probably experienced some form of revenue loss. And then miscellaneous expenses, PPEs continues to be a thing. Businesses are having to sort of change how they do business a little bit to comply. And I think that as council thinks about moving forward with this, you should also think about the fact that this wave has subsided, but that doesn't mean that there won't be others. And I think that you see some cities that have already obligated almost all of their ARPA money. I think that's very foolish in some sense, because it could be, and hope not, but next year we have an even worse situation and have nothing to spend. Here's just an idea about, like, in terms of size of businesses. You see that only a small percentage are more than 50 employees. The vast majority are 1 to 10. You have some sole proprietorships there, and in 11 to 20 range. Here's the business structure. You have all types. You have a lot of sole proprietorships, and then corporate entities, and then every other option you can see there. So here's just a general question that we posed to them about, like, what would you do with it? And I think that's an important piece of data for the council to know. And you see that this is about as broad a response as you can get. The only one that was much smaller is this bottom line about expanding current footprint. But everybody else, it's all things that they need to do to just keep the doors open and continue to operate until things continue to improve. Oh, wait a minute, Tom, can you come on up? So Tom, I asked Tom if he wouldn't mind just for a few moments, share with you a little bit about what he learned after doing a lot of the outreach himself. One last thing, I'm not putting you on the spot here, I just forgot to say it. Tom and I have a handshake deal that the city would pay any third-party entity that wanted to administer the program some amount of the total. You see 10% kind of out there quite a bit. Tom, because he's a nice guy, has said that the chamber is willing to do it for 5% of the total, which is it's $50,000. I can tell you that I run a very similar program that was only $250,000, and we spent at least $25,000 in admin for that. And what you get with it is the chamber is going to do multiple outreach to all members, non-members alike. Don't get treated any different. Why don't you tell them all the other things?
Yeah, sure. After all this time, all these months, I lose my voice. The one night I need to talk about this, I lose my voice. Kind of a rough week last week, but anyway, no, thank you, Sean. And Sean's been great working with this. We did the survey out to 532 businesses. Obviously, those aren't all chamber members. And the survey results, as you can see, we had about 80 responses. So actually fairly good. They came in real fast. But most of the businesses we're talking about, they need to retain or hire new, obviously, staffing. That was one of the main number one items. And then, of course, just trying to keep the doors open. Expansion, we thought that might be a little more. I know several businesses that want to expand right now and they can use some matching funds or something, but it's really just keeping the doors open. We've had a couple of local businesses lately do a GoFundMe on their business. I don't know if you've seen that on Facebook, but they're still struggling, and not only in Lincoln, but in other, Rockland, Roseville, also some of our members there. But the program itself, we've been working on this for a long time. Jennifer Hansen and myself and Pam Lopez from the DLA did the last grant program that the county offered. And we were able to give out $175,000 from the county, the last part of the SHARES Act. And that when we had 83 applications come in and we funded 75 of them, which was about $3,000 a piece on average. With this program, I'm thinking we'll probably receive about 150 applications. And as we go through the application process, we have many examples of, again, Placer Share stuff, Elk Grove and other cities. They kept it simple. And we just really, between staff and myself, we're going to figure out exactly how we want to do the grant. I have some ideas in here, but I'd rather just go over Sean. But based it on, you can do revenue loss or your net revenue in 2019. And we'll have a tiered system. But to just emulate what Sean said, this isn't going to be just anyone comes in and applies and gets along. We have a matrix. We have priorities of different businesses, restaurants, retail, non-grocery, salons, fitness gym. We have a priority matrix that the county approved last time. So we would go through that and we'll make some changes, but it's going to be a fair process. And one of the big ideas that I want to push through is doing some workshops. Because we will have to do workshops to help some of the businesses do this. Just the 75 to 80 people I worked with last time, it was kind of had to go out door to door and ask them to apply because they just feel like free money, doesn't make sense. So it was difficult. But I really think with this program, people, I think we should probably double that of what we're going to do. So is there anything else, Sean, you can think of?
So Tom, in addition to all of that, Tom, it's technical assistance, workshops. We're going to set up. We have set up a very fair and impartial committee to be reviewing the application, so that it's a technical review of an application. The last thing that we will allow, we will never allow, is any sort of influence that has to do with, favoritism. It's going to be, what are your numbers? What do you intend to use the funds for? And we believe that based on gross revenues, typically the tiers will be something like $7,500, $10,000, maybe up to 20 at the most. And if you think about it, sounds like a lot of money at $20,000, but if you think about the losses over multiple years, it's really very little. So it's just sort of some help that we can give. So we can come back to that because that's sort of the action tonight. But before we do, I wanted to go through the other 3 items here. So the other concept that we had discussed, which is a bigger price tag, is fire department personnel funding. I think that it's important to just recognize that the fire department, maybe more than any other department, has been directly involved with the emergency response. Not to say that everybody hasn't, it's just that there are very few public safety members, aside from maybe police and fire, that are actually going into homes of people that are affected. And frankly, it has really been difficult to meet service demand. And I worry, and I think everybody worries, that if there's future waves, that's going to continue to press even harder. So one idea that the council had discussed was funding a series of positions out of this money to for a 3-year term, with the understanding that it helps us, at least in the short term, artificially bring up our staffing levels to some degree to meet the greater service demand. And so if I was writing that little paragraph we talked about, that's essentially what I would write. We would make sure that we combined it with appropriately budgeted amount from the new tax sharing agreements fund 101, because that money also needs to spend. So the numbers on this slide are actually probably their worst case scenarios, assuming fund 101 didn't exist. Okay. 6 firefighters salary and benefits over a 3-year period is roughly $2 million. That number increases by about $1 million when you go up to 9 firefighters, and another little more than $1 million when you go up to 12 firefighters. I wish I could give you a really clear analysis of what I think the Fund 101 dollars would offset this. I can't do it because we only have 1 year of experience in receiving those. After we receive another year, we'll have a pretty good idea. And when I fully bake this up for you for approval at some point or consideration, we'll put in some assumptions about how you can budget for that appropriately. Okay, so that's fire. Nonprofit grant program. So similarly, there was some expressed interest in the needs analysis. We're working on that still. We've got some feedback, but there's a little bit of additional outreach that we need to do. And I think the big question that's different than it would be for a business is nonprofits serve specific purposes, and nonprofit is sort of a nebulous term. It could mean a church, it could mean a theater arts company. For example, I met with one today that's nonprofit. It could mean the Lighthouse. It could mean a variety of different types of things. So that's a slightly more complicated analysis, because I think that there's no question if you give funding to a business that funding, especially a small business and a brick and mortar one, it's going to remain in Lincoln because that's where they're located. Nonprofits are located in many places in some cases. And so we're going to need to figure out a way to build in some protections for the city, that those dollars that are being spent for nonprofit services are being rendered to Lincolnites. Is that what we say here? Okay. Okay. And then finally, mental health resource funding. This was also brought up. I'm in the process right now of looking at a number of different creative programs. There's some really neat stuff that's happened up and down the state already, and probably a lot more coming. I don't have enough now to share with you the architecture of how it would look, but what I could tell you is that everything from literally providing mental health resources via like telehealth to your community free has been out there and has been piloted in a number of places, as well as partnering with school districts to sort of add, additional help. So there's a variety, and I think what I'm going to do in a subcategory of ARPA is separately under separate cover. I'll give you a bunch of options that you can strike and tell me you like or not. So to wrap it up, because I've been talking way too long, approval of the attached resolution. would allow us to move forward immediately with the grant program. Christine and I will work on getting, in fact, I think the agreement's already been drafted to contract with the chamber. Tom stands ready to go to get this out onto the streets. And one of the things I've asked him to do, and we'll work with him on, is once we get this initial funding round out, we're going to circle back with a sampling of all of those businesses and get some specific testimonials about how did this help you? You know, what has been the impact of that? Because I think we just forget about it, right? And it'd be nice to know that these dollars really went to saving somebody's business or helping them, you know, hire staff when they couldn't or things like that. So, and then separate of that, if you'd like to provide any additional feedback or new direction on ARPA, I stand here waiting to hear it.
All right, thank you, Sean. Appreciate that. Couple quick questions before I go down the line here. This initial business grant, is it $1 million total? Because I forgot what we said. Is it just 1 million or is it 1 million to start and then we're going to come back and do more?
Yeah, I think $1 million gets us off the ground, and it may be that that's fine. It may be that Tom's wrong and we get 200 applications and a lot of them are fundable.
Right.
In which case we'll come back and say, hey, we think we need another tranche. Everybody uses that term now, of $250,000 or whatever amount.
And then I'm just curious, who are you thinking or what type of people or where are you going to pull from this impartial committee to go over the applications?
The safest way to do it, in my opinion, is well, here's what I've done in the past. Staff, not board members from the chamber, serve as one portion of the review committee. And then probably Christine and or I will either if she's willing to, and if I'm willing to, one of us would serve sort of an impartial reviewer. And then usually what I've done is pick one or two other staff people in other departments. Because to be honest with you, it's a technical review. Does it meet the criteria? Have they put reasonable justification about how they like to use the funds? And then we have tiers about we're going to focus on the businesses most hard hit first, try to fund as many of those as possible. And then we move down to tier 2 for businesses that were affected, but not as affected as maybe like a restaurant or a salon or something like that. So, and I think it's critically important because we do not want any criticism of any kind that it wasn't just a straight up technical, you know, black and white review.
And then one last question. I know we're not deciding on that tonight. We're only doing the business grant, but I'm just curious your thoughts on the 6, 9, or 12 firefighters. And you said you're going to, how soon can you have that back to us so we can make a decision on that?
Very next meeting.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
You know, if you want my recommendation, conservative Sean would always say you start with 6. You know, you have the funding to do much more than that. But I think that 6 firefighters, and we can maybe have Chief speak to this a little bit. Does it solve all of your issues? No, but Chief, how many firefighters do we have on or currently employed? You know what the number
Currently
is?
employed 18.
18. So you're adding a third. I mean, in 1 year. I mean, that's significant. So, but you know, obviously if council wants to be a little bit more aggressive, that's fine.
I was kind of hoping for 9, but that's a conversation we'll have, but that's just my thought. But anyway, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Dornan.
No questions, really. I want to thank Tom for going back out. And I know you'd already done it, but this gave me the peace of mind I needed and the data points I needed to be able to get behind this. I think this is an essential program that we get out there very rapidly. So I appreciate your work. I appreciate the Chamber's willingness to take this on and to assist us in not spending more than we have to in administering the program as well. And I appreciate Sean's thoughtfulness and how we can go about all of this in a very meticulous and transparent way. So I'm going to support this tonight. I hope that we have a process in place that will review future needs if indeed Tom got it wrong and we need more, that we can move swiftly and come back around and deal with that as well. That word tranche came out of nowhere for me. I'm 65 years old and it appeared for the first time
No, everybody's
about
using
a
it.
year and a half ago.
What?
No,
I've been hearing it
no,
a lot lately.
no, it came out of the governor's mouth first, and then all of a
Oh,
sudden
it's
it was
been around for a
everywhere.
very-
So I got through most of my life without tranche. I'll try not to use it at all. With respect to fire, that is a good conversation we need to have very soon. What I'm going to be curious about, Chief, is how, frankly, how rapidly you can onboard people and absorb them. Is 6 the right number to start that off with a review later, or is 9 doable? You don't have to answer that tonight, but
I'll say 9 is doable, because 9 is what we need to evenly staff all the stations for all the shifts. So anything less than that would be a Band-Aid, and doing 9 would be doing it right.
all right, well, don't hold back. I appreciate that. It's a very straightforward answer.
Thank you. Councilmember Carlson.
Tom, thank you for 5%. That is, I've gone to nonprofits, which you are, in the past to have them administer things. And it's much more than 5%. So thank you very much.
Going through the last 2 years, like I said, our dinner the other night, it's been quite frankly like hell. You know, some of these, you know, having the membership that we have, you know, we get the late calls on Friday night, 9:30 at night, talking about, you know, the stuff they're going through. And so I just want to get this out. Again, I lose my voice tonight. We're talking about it. It's just crazy, but anything we can do, the chamber wants to help.
And I think the 6, 9, or 12 decision is really predicated on what the supplemental tax looks like. If you remember right, we said we would base it so it isn't acting like one-time money. All it's doing is speeding up the process of acquiring people. So I think that number is, everything else is predicated on the tax flow and the projected tax flow. So that we all felt good, right? Using one-time money to hire people, that we were covered.
The term was
in theory.
comfortably uncomfortable.
So that's really all I had to say.
Councilmember Lawrenson.
Yeah, I have a question for Tom. By the way, thank you very much for both of you for your presentation. It was excellent. Tom, I had the question. Is this the money that we're giving out to these businesses, you know, in need, obviously? It's going to be for businesses, obviously, that are going to stay here in business in Lincoln? Or?
Well, yeah, that's the goal. I can't think of any right now that are, I mean, there's some that are in need of certain equipment. You know, they're doing some GoFundMe's right now. So there's nothing that I'm aware of that they're getting ready to shut the door. You know,
Yeah.
so it's just, as you see in the survey, you know, they need to hire more people. Again, they spent a lot of money on PPP, which is crazy, PPE. One note about the one graph was 50 is almost 50-50 on the businesses that didn't apply for any help. Other than PPP, we excluded that. But I was really surprised, no plaster shares, no idle. I mean, I was really almost shocked that 50% of the businesses, because we hammered that for the last 2 years. And so that just kind of goes to show you they're a little hesitant about doing these things. And you know, I'm confident that we'll have a nice clean system and look at the matrix, and we'll get it done. And if we need a little more money, if we get a little more applications, we'll come back. So, and then nonprofits, we can do the same process. And we did a survey with that too, and we can work on that as soon as get this thing done, and we can go right to them. So.
All right, got it, Bill?
Can you take me back to that first chart,
Yep. This one.
the
This one?
standard allowance chart?
Oh, there it is.
All right, so if we're keeping this at 1 million and the program is going to small businesses or local businesses, And it's for any number of things that they can use it for. Let's say that some of them don't fully line up with the ARPA specifications. If it's under 1 million, we don't have to submit anything. So we're covered.
Yeah, I think,
But what happens if we have that somewhat loose program, which is what it sounds like it kind of is, and then there is additional need, and now we go out with a second tranche, and now it's over $1 million of funding, and now we do have to have written justification.
my reading of the rule is not that each individual expenditure has to have written justification. It's that the city has established this program. And say you give out 50 grants, each individual grant would, let's say we had 100 million. Each individual grant wouldn't have to write that justification. It's a justification for the total program.
That was my question,
Yeah.
right? So first tranche, $1 million. We give this $1 million program out to our local businesses. ARPA actually has very specific economic development impacts, how you're able to give that $1 to a non-government entity, right? So if I'm giving money to a local business, it has, by their final ruling, it has to have direct nexus to COVID loss, which your survey was wonderful. It said, here's how were you impacted by COVID? Here's the different ways. Let's say that somebody is like, I want to use these funds because I need to, I don't know, they backfill it in some way and they use it in a way for beautification of their business, or they do something that is out of line with the immediate program requirements. If we keep it at 1 million, we're not subject under the in line with allowable uses or the out of line with allowable uses. We don't have to report at all, 1 million and less for the
That's
program.
correct.
But let's say that we have a second tranche and now as a program, we're now at 1.5 million. Well, now we're over 1 million and now we do have to report for not allowable uses. And we just have to have written justification, but it changes our liability. So my
Well-
question is, how are we going to structure the program? Are we going to be very strict about, hey, here's COVID related losses and this is what you may spend the funds on and you're going to have to report to us because we're going to have to keep a record? Or are we going to be like, it's $1 million or less, we don't have to keep written justification, we're good?
No, I think even if the second thing you just said was the case, it's still good practice for us to require that they share with us how they're using the funds. It would be really bad if somebody.
But are we putting restrictions on how they can be used?
They're
Like, are
going
we,
to, as part of the program, it should have a provision that allows us to review and audit, practically small amounts of money. It probably would only be necessary if you just became aware that there was a serious, misuse of the funds. But yeah, you want to avoid a situation where, Bob's Burgers decides to go buy a boat for him and his family with the 20,000.
well, you're
like,
saying
that's
misuse,
about-
but we've had previous discussions before, right? How DLA and chamber and certain entities wanted to be able to access some of these funds for things that honestly, these funds should be able to be used for, like, that would increase our economic development opportunity, but are outside of the immediate scope of ARPA. So I'm just wondering where we landed. I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Here's, if you look at the resolution, I wrote it specifically to create that justification. So honestly,
That's what I was doing on my phone.
if we,
Looking at it.
honestly, and I feel very confident about it, if we were audited, I think that one of the things we do, other than give them my report, is say, here's the resolution. It has very specific language in there that
Okay.
this needs to be used for that purpose.
And also
Yeah,
on
go
on the application process, on the application
Yes.
itself, it's all tied to COVID and it has, and they attest to it. I put a lot of legalese in there to make Christine happy, but no, I mean, they have
Makes
to
me happy
attest.
too, Tom, deep in my heart.
But no, we are, the application will be more specific and simple, but specific.
Okay, so we're not worried about going over that 1 million mark. That wasn't an intentional, like, oh, hey, we're gonna hit that because it just makes it easier for us. We're good, no matter what, our bases are covered and I can vote on this and be happy.
I think so, because if you look, I didn't put it at 999,999. It's $1 million. So
Making
we're
sure.
in that second tier anyway.
There's checks and balances just in the way that the program's written, the fact that their application has to respond to those checks and balances. So I don't foresee this being a significant concern.
That was my only real question.
Well, I just want to say to Tom also, thank you. Tom's heart for the business community is just so evident. And I mean, he goes above and beyond. I think, and we're very fortunate to have you here. So thank you, Tom, for that. And I look forward to getting this rolled out. And thank you, Sean, also. Okay, so let's see if there's public comment.
Yes, Mayor, we do have a hand raised. Gary McDonald, please go ahead. Gary, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It just showed up now that I was muted. So first of all, I want to say that as a resident of Lincoln, and of course I run Lighthouse, I just wanted to say that we're in full support of the proposal, and I think that Tom has done an excellent job. I think that the council should consider giving him the full 10%, and part of that be used for retention. I think Tom does a great job. He's probably underpaid, and part of the issue with COVID is there has been a mass resignation. It has been very difficult to hire counseling staff. It's been difficult to hire any staff. Our advertised rates are about 20% more than it was in the past, and we're to a point where we are offering starting salaries what we are currently paying our staff. And the problem with that is, of course, that if there is anyone else paying more, that there is a possibility that they could go to another nonprofit or go to work for the county. So one of our primary concerns is retention. In addition to that, we need to expand because the mental health need has dramatically increased because of COVID. In my email, I sent you all an email. I sent to you all separately because I didn't want anyone to respond and possibly in violation of the Brown Act. So I sent everyone pretty much in the room there the separate email. And then part of the email, I talked about the need. The need should not be underestimated. If you looked at any of the links that I sent in the email, you can see that the need for mental health was unmet before COVID hit, and it has gotten much worse. We have, in my email, I think that I mentioned that we have 2 families where a child attempted suicide and failed. We're getting more and more children, 40% increase in children with suicidal ideation, and we're also getting more children that are cutting. And behavioral health in relationship to children is directly related to the the ARPA funding, and that was in the email as well. And then lastly, I wanted to say that I believe in the email I mentioned that we have over 500 people on a wait list for mental health counseling. And then in closing, I wanted to say that 2 things. First of all, it is easy to restrict funds. We do it all the time. We get many grants that are restricted funds, so we restrict them and we can track that. And then lastly, for every dollar spent, Lighthouse over the last 3 years, 2% went to administration. I'll end because my time's up. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Really appreciate that. I'll come back to your comments in a second. Was there anybody else with their hand raised?
No, Mayor, no other hands.
Okay, anybody in the gallery want to go ahead, Mr. Chapman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members, and city staff. Again, Byron Chapman on 12 Bridges area. In reviewing the steps taken, without question, I probably have a difficult time probably trying to find anyone that say, no, it didn't have the impact that it has, and it certainly has. Specifically, I'd like to zero in on the firefighter issue. I too kind of bounced around with the numbers and what it may or may not do for the fire department. And if anything, the number 9 should probably be the starting point. I recognize, I think anybody that's following, the public safety employees, that over the years prior to COVID, we've been working very, very hard in order to try to find the dollars in order to get the people onto the job and on a continuous basis. Here, I believe once we get that into place, I can't figure or think of another time that would be any greater or any easier to do than now. Because without those dollars, it still has made it very, very difficult to get that initial push to get people into those places. Once you do that, actually, when you implement a program, oftentimes then it's so much easier to operate. Yes, it comes out of the general fund. That's part of what the expenses are. But again, now you know what you're funding for. You're kickstarted with the amount of money that we don't have to come out of the general fund. And I believe that that's probably, like I said, at least the minimum in which we should look at that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Go ahead, Tony. Thank you.
I really am amazed tonight. This is the second good thing, seeing this new, not attitude, but cooperation between the city manager or city and chamber staff. I know Tom works really hard for the community. And that's really what Lincoln needs, is using the chamber members and infusing some money here and there to really help the community, but really use the force to move forward. And this is really amazing. And I do echo Gary's comments about the 10%, probably it's well due, or at least maybe looking at the tier program where, initial 500,000 will be 10% and going after that. So when you hit million above, will be 5%. But I know it's a lot of hard work and there's a lot of people in need, and I echo the staff. I was talking to Caltrans employees, they get so much money that nobody can compete with them, in our business. So, and small communities having hard time to keep employees because of the salaries. They go somewhere else, or they stay home and the state or the federal government pays them. So it's really hard time. We appreciate the cooperation. It's really looking forward to a good time. Thanks, Sean. And
Thank you, Tony. So in regards to I'm just going to make a couple comments here. In regards to the paying the chamber 5 or 10% for administration, I feel like, it would be wonderful to give him more. But I feel like the chamber, and specifically with Tom and the leadership, is a real partner with the city. So at this point, my personal feeling is we're going to be grateful for your offer of 5%, and we're going to accept it. And then if something comes down the road where we can do more, I think we were open to talk about that. But we're going to just say thank you for that. And I don't disagree that it would be great to give him 10%, but the more money we spend on administration, the less we can give to businesses. And I think Tom's heart is to give as much to the business community as possible. So we're very grateful for your generosity. And like I said, nobody works harder in this town than Tom and Drury, and I really appreciate it. And then going back to Gary's comments about the mental health needs, I think everybody on this council agrees with you, Gary, if you're still listening. And I appreciated your email. And we'll get there, in that mental health assessment. But nobody's denying the needs. In fact, as a public school teacher, I have more and more kids who are struggling. Several of my former students have committed suicide in the last 2 years, which is just devastating. It's heartbreaking. And and I'm on the board of Kids First of Placer County, and we have actually stopped receiving new referrals for counseling. We're going through our wait list because we don't have enough counselors. So the need is there. We agree with you, Gary. And I know Councilmember Silhai has brought that up multiple times about we do want to fund that. So appreciate the comments, and we're very much aware, and that's on the list, and we'll get to it, right? Did you want to say
I was just going to say, I know that I've been beating that drum, but it's really important to me. I think probably just because I've seen the impacts, at least on our children. I have 3 little ones at home, and I've seen what it's done to them, to their friend groups. It's a lot to families. And so I would agree with you. I really want to thank you, Gary, if you are listening, for all that you have done in our community and to address that. And I'm looking forward, Sean, this is for you, to any separate from the nonprofit side, on the mental health side. I think that there's some really innovative, cool things that we could consider. And I'm really looking forward to seeing those proposals. And then to you, Chief, I know that you hear us all the time, but I'm really hoping that we're able to at least start to put some teeth behind it with some of these funds to help you out. So I'm looking forward to the continuation of those discussions. And thank you, Tom, for getting this one right out the door, because it's already like a year too late.
And I would also just really agree with Tony that it's very exciting. These conversations are very exciting, and it's a really it's a really exciting time to be part of Lincoln. And so I sound like a broken record, but really it is with Sean being here and the new staff we're going to meet in a little bit here, and just building the team and moving forward. And Mr. Chapman is correct that the having these ARPA funds, it's a good problem to have, to figure out how we're going to spend them. And funding the fire department, we can discuss 6 or 9 or 12 or whatever, so everybody is uncomfortably comfortable, right? But if this is a rare opportunity that we will never have again, I don't think. And so my heart is to grab it and do as much as we can with it. Gwen, are there any other public comments?
Mayor, Gary has his hand raised.
Gary, did you want to come back and make another comment?
Nope,
Or did he
lowered it.
forget to just take his hand down? Okay, all right.
It takes a while for the window to pop up to unmute, so I apologize for that. I just wanted to say that I'm still here. I hear you, and I appreciate all the hard work that you're doing on many different areas across the board, infrastructure, the tax issue that we have. I just want you to know that I've served on city council in the past in Manitou Springs. I think you're doing a great job, and I do hear you, and I do appreciate everything you're doing, and I appreciate that you're acknowledging the mental health need, because I see it every day, and it just breaks my heart. So I would have been there in person, but COVID is still alive, and I caught COVID a week ago, and so I'm still testing positive, even though they've released me to go back to work as long as I'm masking. But anyway, I want to let you know I'm still here, and I hear you, and I appreciate all your good work. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Gary. I hope you're feeling okay. All right, so we'll bring it back to the council. If you have other comments or questions, please go ahead. Otherwise, I will take a motion to approve the resolution that's before us.
I motion. Sorry.
No, go for it.
Do we need to read this
I
again?
think you might need to read it because
Read-
you didn't
read-
read the full thing.
Yep,
So just
read it.
start with number 2, right here.
I did read it, but you can read it
Oh,
again.
did
Go
you?
Yeah,
It's
ahead.
right here. Adopt resolution 2022.
Okay, adopt resolution 2022-52, authorizing a Lincoln Business Grant Assistance Program and direct the city manager to execute necessary agreement for the administration of the program with the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Sorry about that. Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskin,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai.
Yes.
And Mayor Andriotta.
Enthusiastic, yes. All right, thank you, everybody, for all that hard work. All right, moving on to item 11, council-initiated business. I do have one item of business. I never heard back about, I know Gwen sent out date possibilities for Sean's reception, but I didn't hear back if we had picked one. What's the status on that, Gwen?
We had only heard from a couple folks. I handed it off to Jen Riling, so.
Can somebody just
We'll send around another.
send it around? Okay,
yeah.
great. Thank you. Appreciate that. I don't want too much time to go by before we do that. I know you're trying to skate it, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
I want it to be a big thing.
It's gonna be- it's
outdoors
gonna-
on Bierman's Plaza,
it's
so
gonna be
everyone
big.
can come and meet you.
Yes. So you can just stop that right now. It's going to happen. Yes.
So,
Okay.
so based on Gwen's sideways look, that suggested that she sent it around to the council and hasn't heard back from a few of us, as opposed to we sent it out to the whole town and only hear back from a couple people who want to come. So
I know
I'll
I
keep an eye
sent
out
back
for it.
my response.
I guess she's looking at me.
So I will say that I think we've had some shifts on the city's website and maybe with the emails as well. More and more is going to my spam filter.
I don't know if I saw it.
So what was
Yeah.
that?
I don't know if I saw that email, but also I might have just not seen
Yeah.
it because
Yeah.
sometimes it gets.
It's
Yeah.
fine. Just send it
we'll
back around
Yes,
and
please
we'll
do.
get something on the schedule. Awesome. Great. Paul, do you have any business?
Well, it sounds like you're already going to make an introduction for us, or that Sean will.
Yeah.
So I'll leave you.
Are you ready to do
Please.
that now? I
Yeah,
was going to
please.
wait. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm very, very excited to introduce to everybody our finance director, Anita Racker, who I feel like I know a lot about her background because I've told everybody for 3 months now where she's from. And if you don't know, Anita comes to us from El Dorado County, where she was the chief fiscal officer for the Health and Human Service Agency. Before that, she was with the city of Auburn as finance director. And before that, she was a finance director at the South Lake Tahoe, North Tahoe Fire Protection District, and is a CPA. And then before that, she worked in auditing firms and a long, long history of finance expertise. And so she's been on board with us for a week today. and is already diving in. And we're just very, very happy to have her here. And I encourage anybody from the public that wants to learn more about city finances to contact her.
Awesome. Welcome. It's great to have you. How are you liking it so far?
Ooh, putting her on the spot.
No, yeah.
Lincoln is a very complicated city. I don't think I have to tell this council that, and there is a lot to learn and a lot to get your arms around. And I'm very excited about the opportunity and appreciate all the welcome that I've received from this community.
We're thrilled to have you
Very
here.
thrilled to have you. Just as a side note, as an example of what a small world we live in. So where you just came from, one of your coworkers, Grant Weber, his sister is my student teacher. And she brought you up. Wasn't even talking about it. She's like, yeah, your new finance director. And I said, yeah. She goes, yeah, she worked with my brother. And I was like, oh my gosh, so crazy world. Anyway, we're
Grant
very,
is a good guy.
yeah, and she is too. It's really great. So any other comments? or what-
Yeah, so Sudvi brought this up for me. Sean, can you give us an update on where we are on the tax sharing agreement and the annexation of Village 5?
Sure can. So not that far off from this approval. The cool thing about this agreement is that it's scalable and applicable to Village 5. Village 5 is a massive project by comparison, massive. In fact, Village 5 is roughly 4 million square feet of commercial, separate of the million we just spoke about this evening. So there's a little more scale to it, but the tax sharing agreement, as I've discussed with the county, is going to follow kind of maybe not exactly the same numbers, but a similar path. And so that'll be ready to go in short order. And then the planning component of it is mostly completed, I think, at this point. And so it's just a matter of the developer and project applicants packaging together their LAFCO paperwork and moving on. So I would say, I'll get back to you on the specific date, but if I had to handicap it, I'd say 3 months plus or minus.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Dan, do you have any business? Bill?
Yeah, I just had one item. Last Thursday, we had a great presentation at the Rotary Club by Mr. George Alves about fire safety. And that's something I've been really worried about. He mentioned the fact that they have these firewise councils with the county. And we used to belong. I don't know if anyone remembers that. And we don't belong now, and I don't know why we don't belong, but it might be a good idea to rejoin again because our city is kind of expanding into some of these rural areas. And it'd be nice to maybe coordinate some efforts with the county as far as fire safety is concerned, especially mitigation efforts. I don't know, I don't really know what would involve, but other than the fact that it'd be another committee that we would serve on, we'd probably have to have a member of our council serve on it and possibly somebody else from the city. I talked to Sean about it. I don't know how much this effort would be placed on the staff, but I'm sure it would involve community development, the fire department, and possibly code enforcement. But I just really feel maybe it'd be a good idea to actually rejoin this committee.
Chief, is he talking about fire safe councils?
Is he talking about fire safe? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I thought your dad was our fire safe council lead for, is it just rural or is it all, I thought it was all Lincoln fire safe?
The Lincoln City proper is not
okay.
really
Yeah.
involved.
Okay.
So it's unincorporated Lincoln.
Okay, so that's what you're talking about. the
Yeah,
city proper.
and he mentioned
Okay.
that the city might want to rejoin. He said we did belong to it at one time. I'm not sure when.
We can have Sean talk to
That
Chief
would've-
about what that looks like and if
Yeah.
it's appropriate.
I don't know.
I can't imagine we ever
We ever
would
were.
have. We were a volunteer fire department until frankly this century.
Yeah.
And I don't
I
recall.
mean, fire safe councils do good work statewide. They're like a thing. I don't know that it necessarily, maybe have Sean talk to Chief and you guys can report back
Call
to
your dad.
us. Yeah.
Anyway.
I have connections.
Speaking of small towns,
It was Mr. Alves that actually requested it, so.
Okay.
I have nothing.
Nothing, okay. So for, not for business, but for information, I do have one piece of information. It's kind of fun. I was contacted last week or 2 weeks ago from a gentleman from Business View Civil and Municipal Magazine. And they do story and features on cities that are under 100,000 people. So we had like a 15, 20-minute Zoom meeting. He asked me a bunch of questions about Lincoln. We talked about, the history and all that. And he said, okay, I'm going to present this to my editors and we'll see if we want to move forward. I heard back from him today. And so they are going to do a full feature on the city of Lincoln, which it's really exciting. There's no cost to us. If anybody's interested, I could forward you on the examples. You're probably familiar with the magazine. And so Sean and Paul have graciously agreed to help me do that because being the city manager and Councilmember Joyner having such institutional memory as well. So anyway, I'm really looking forward to the process, and it's a whole like production thing, and it'll be really fun for Lincoln. It'll be a good feature. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Where are we on Hallmark coming out for our Christmas?
Oh, yes, I need to contact them.
For real?
For real, yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Shoots almost exclusively in Canada
Canada, right.
for everywhere else in America.
Yeah,
They just haven't discovered.
They
us
haven't
yet.
seen the real deal yet.
all right. Anybody else have any information items?
Yeah, I'd like to mention that last week, most of us actually attended a groundbreaking on a new project, residential project in Lincoln. And what I'm excited about is the fact that the model that they're using is a rental project of single-family dwellings primarily. So they have 161 homes that will be for rent, not purchase. Well, there's some of them are duplexes, but primarily they're single-family residences. And I think that fulfills a need
Mhm.
that we've had in the community for a lot of years. So as I say, I was blown away.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how that actually plays out. If it's as good.
I'm
as it is.
assuming it's going to play out
That's,
correctly.
I'm assuming too. I'm anxious to see.
What makes it cool and innovative is that, at least in our community, there hasn't been an entity that has filled this space. Typically, if you wanted to rent a single-family home, you did so from a private owner who might own an investment property or two or three. This is an entirely owned and managed property that will not be allowed to degrade, that will not be allowed to fall into disrepair, which I think is often the worry that a absentee landlord might allow that to happen. And so this is an interesting model moving forward. It's spreading far and wide, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it fits into the community.
Any information? No? All right. 7:36. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
I think that Dan holds the record. Was it you or Peter?
As usual.
So they wrap it 8.
No, Dan.